When people hear the phrase, women in Islam, they often picture restrictions, not rights. But the reality is profoundly different. Long before modern debates on feminism and gender equality even began, Islam had already laid down the foundations of dignity, honor, and empowerment for women, over 1,400 years ago. Islam didn't come to restrict women. It came to elevate them. It came at a time when women were voiceless, nameless in society, often inherited like property and denied the right to live, let alone thrive. And in that very era, the Quran declared, "Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you." Surah Al-Hujurat 49:13. This wasn't just a spiritual teaching, it was a statement of equality. In the eyes of the Creator, gender didn't define value. Righteousness did. Women were not inferior, not less than, but honored as full human beings with souls, rights, and purpose. Today, the problem isn't with Islam, it's with the way its teachings are often misunderstood or misapplied through cultural practices that have no basis in the Quran or Sunnah. The core of Islam has always been about justice, mercy, and balance. It honors women not just as mothers and daughters, but as leaders, thinkers, and believers. This video series is a journey into that truth. It's a rediscovery of the divine honor Islam gives women, a lens through which we'll explore their historical roles, their modern-day rights, and the timeless teachings that continue to empower them across generations. We'll talk about their status before Islam, their powerful presence in early Islamic society, their right to education, finances, leadership, and marriage, and how Islam equips women to thrive in today's world with dignity and strength. This isn't a defense of Islam. It's a celebration of what it has always stood for: empowerment, love, and equality. Let's begin. To truly appreciate the transformation Islam brought for women, we must first understand what life looked like before it. Before Islam, a world without rights. Pre-Islamic Arabia, also known as the Age of Ignorance, Jahiliyyah, was a harsh world for women. Many girls were seen as burdens. Daughters were often buried alive out of shame. Women had no inheritance rights. They were not allowed to own property, speak in public forums, or choose their spouses. In many tribes, they were counted as part of a man's possessions, passed along through inheritance like camels or swords. It was a system that denied women their most basic humanity. Their voices were silenced, their worth tied to men, and their choices non-existent. And then came Islam. A divine shift, Islam restores dignity. With the revelation of the Quran, Allah SWT did not just critique these systems, He abolished them. Islam redefined what it meant to be a woman in society, not as someone to be hidden or humiliated, but someone worthy of honor, rights, and protection. When the female, infant, buried alive is questioned, for what sin she was killed. Surah At-Takwir 81:8-9. This powerful verse stopped an age-old atrocity in its tracks. The very act of questioning this crime in the Quran was a declaration: her life matters. Her death is not forgotten. Women were no longer voiceless. They were seen, heard, and valued. And do not kill your children for fear of poverty. We provide for them and for you. Surah Al-Isra 17:31. This verse wasn't just about protecting girls, it was about changing hearts. It taught compassion, value, and divine responsibility. Islam did not merely make small improvements, it completely transformed the narrative. Where there was once darkness, it brought light. Where there was injustice, it brought divine justice. And where women were once oppressed, they now stood as honored, protected, and empowered members of the Muslim Ummah. When we look at the early days of Islam, women weren't just present, they were pivotal. They weren't in the background of the story, they were right there on the front lines of change, sacrifice, and devotion. From the very beginning, women played critical roles in shaping the Islamic community. Khadijah, Allah Ta'ala anha, the first believer. The story begins with Khadijah bint Khuwaylid, RA Ta'ala Anha, a wealthy and respected businesswoman in Makkah. She was the first person to accept Islam, and the strongest support system for the Prophet during the hardest moments of revelation. She financed the early Islamic mission with her wealth. But more than that, she offered unwavering emotional strength. The Prophet once said, "She believed in me when no one else did. She embraced Islam when people rejected me, and she supported me with her wealth when no one else gave me anything." Musnad Ahmad. Khadijah's example shows that women were not just supporters, they were leaders, bold, wise, and generous. Aisha, RA Ta'ala Anha, scholar, teacher, and witness to revelation. Another remarkable figure was Aisha bint Abu Bakr, RA Ta'ala Anha. Known for her intelligence, memory, and insight, Aisha became one of the greatest scholars of Islam. She narrated over 2,000 hadiths, covering topics from theology to medicine to politics. She led academic discussions, taught both men and women, and was consulted by senior companions. The Prophet said, "Take half your religion from this Humaira, Aisha." Sunan al-Tirmidhi. This wasn't just praise, it was a validation of her authority and intellect. Aisha's life shows that women can be scholars, leaders, and voices of Islamic knowledge. Amra, RA Ta'ala Anha, defender in battle. Women also stood in the battlefield. One such woman was Nusayba bint Ka'b, RA Ta'ala Anha, better known as Amra. At the Battle of Uhud, when many fled the scene, she picked up her sword and shield and stood to defend the Prophet. He later said, "Whenever I turned my face to the right or left on the day of Uhud, I saw her fighting to protect me." Ibn Sa'd, Tabaqat. She was wounded multiple times but remained steadfast. Her courage wasn't just accepted, it was honored. Women as educators, helpers, and contributors. Countless other women took part in building the society. They memorized Quran, taught Hadith, and played vital roles in the political, social, and intellectual development of the Ummah. The believers, men and women, are allies of one another. They enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong. Surah At-Tawbah. This verse wasn't metaphorical, it was a divine affirmation that women and men are spiritual partners in building society. These early women weren't exceptions. They were the standard of what Islam encouraged: strong, educated, brave, and active members of their communities. When Islam was revealed, one of its most powerful messages was this: knowledge is not optional, it's essential. And this command was for both men and women. The Quran and Hadith are filled with messages encouraging women to seek knowledge, break ignorance, and rise in wisdom. Education is a right, not a privilege. The Prophet Muhammad said, "Seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim." Sunan Ibn Majah 224. He didn't say, every man, he said every Muslim. That includes women, unconditionally. Islam never put a limit on a woman's right to learn. Are those who know equal to those who do not know? Surah Az-Zumar 39:9. This verse celebrates knowledge as a status of honor. Women, too, were created with the ability and right to think, question, learn, and teach. Aisha, RA Ta'ala Anha, a scholar for the ages. A shining example of this is Aisha, RA Ta'ala Anha. She wasn't only a wife of the Prophet, she was a scholar, teacher, and jurist. After his passing, she became a primary source of Islamic law and understanding for generations of scholars. Men came to her to seek fatwas. She corrected companions. She taught students. She was a walking university of her time. Her knowledge covered Hadith, Quranic interpretation, Arabic literature, history, medicine. Aisha's legacy is proof that Islam didn't just allow women to be educated, it celebrated it. The Prophet personally educated women. The Prophet used to set aside time specifically for teaching women. In a time when women were often excluded from religious education, Islam opened doors. One hadith mentions, "A woman came to the Messenger of Allah and said, 'O Messenger of Allah, the men have taken all your time, so set aside a day for us.' So he set aside a day to meet with them and teach them." Sahih al-Bukhari. This shows a deep respect for women's intellectual development. The Prophet treated women's questions, concerns, and thoughts with serious attention and guidance. Women as educators themselves. Throughout Islamic history, women were not just receivers of knowledge, they became transmitters of it. Fatima al-Firi founded the University of Al-Qarawiyyin in Morocco, the world's oldest continually operating university. Yes, the oldest university in the world was founded by a Muslim woman. Al-Darda taught hadith in Damascus and Jerusalem. Her students included high-ranking scholars and judges. These weren't fringe figures. They were mainstream, respected, and vital to the growth of Islamic scholarship. Allah will raise those among you who have believed and those who were given knowledge, in degrees. Surah Al-Mujadila 58:11. This divine promise applies to women just as much as it does to men. Islam isn't just supportive of women's education, it made it a pillar of their empowerment. From the Quran to the classroom, knowledge is a tool of liberation, and Islam gave that tool to women 1,400 years ago. One of the most empowering aspects of Islam's teachings on women is the complete financial independence it offers them. Long before any modern financial laws recognized women's rights to own property, do business, or manage money, Islam had already established all of these rights for Muslim women. A woman's wealth is hers alone. In Islam, a woman has full control over her earnings, inheritance, savings, and gifts. Her money is her personal property, not to be touched without her consent. To men is allotted what they earn, and to women what they earn. Surah An-Nisa 4:32. This verse confirms the idea that both men and women are entitled to their own earnings. There is no concept in Islam of a woman being financially dependent on a man unless she chooses to be. The Prophet emphasized this too. Whatever a woman spends on her family from her earnings is considered charity, sadaqah. Sahih Bukhari. Her spending is a noble act, not an obligation. She is not required to provide financially for the household, that's the responsibility of the husband or male guardian. Women can inherit, own property, and invest. One of the revolutionary reforms Islam introduced was a structured inheritance system, giving women a rightful share. For men is a share of what parents and close relatives leave, and for women is a share of what parents and close relatives leave, be it little or much, a share ordained. Surah An-Nisa 4:7. No one could deny a woman her inheritance. Even if the amount varied based on responsibilities, her share was guaranteed by divine law. Women in Islamic history were landowners, investors, and financiers. From the time of the Prophet to the Umayyad and Abbasid periods, women owned shops, ran markets, and invested in real estate. Marriage and financial rights. When a woman marries, Islam grants her the mahr, a dowry she keeps, and the husband cannot take it back unless she willingly gives it. And give the women, upon marriage, their dowries graciously. Surah An-Nisa 4:4. Again, this shows Islam's commitment to recognizing a woman's financial independence. In a time when the world still debates economic equality for women, Islam had already provided a comprehensive and protective financial framework for them over 1,400 years ago.